Welcome back, everyone. It's time to talk about the Epic Games Store, something which you maybe use to harvest a bunch of free games, but other than that, maybe don't use that often. It's quite interesting. They've done a whole big media tour talking up their stats, and I suppose I now have a little bit of an insight from things now that our game has been published on numerous different storefronts, of course, including the Epic Games Store. I cannot give, legally specific sales data. Steam just lets you do whatever the hell you want. You can just say any numbers from Steam, but I don't think Epic actually allow that as much. But I can share with you quite a bit from our experience, because why is it that there's a store which gives 88-12 revenue split, which you would think is so much better for the developer, but then why, as the developer, do we say actually the best way to support us is probably still in Steam? Kind of interesting. So, to get into it then, the Epic Games Store in 2022, right, from their year in review, they had 230 million plus PC users, 725 million cross-platform Epic accounts. Have you ever heard of a game called Fortnite? I think it may have something to do with that. 68 million monthly active users as of December 2022. But you got to remember, they gave away Death Stranding on Christmas Day.
Yeah, that's...
So that's quite large. I would also, though, think, still, Valve bigger.
I mean...
Steam bigger.
Obviously.
On all of these.
Yeah, you can look at Steam's numbers, how many concurrent people it has, and you think what concurrency is versus what, how many players. Because you see games with 100k concurrence, and you're like, yeah, but 5 million, 6 million people own that, because concurrency is one small snapshot of the amount of people over however many people are awake or at work or doing other things across the globe.
And here's where it gets interesting and maybe a bit concerning. 820 million USD spent by PC players, which is actually a 2% decrease year over year. And certainly when you're in your growth phase, you do not want to see a decrease. I suppose I have to wonder, could this in fact be that they had less things like Borderlands 3? Maybe less giga-big releases that were heavily pushed onto that platform?
Well, if you look at the next number, you see there's 355 million spent on third-party games.
Oh, yeah.
Which is plus 18% year over year. Which means that, no, it seems like Epic's own offerings has actually went down. Which means on that platform, that's going to be, let's think about it. What games do they have? Fortnite. Which likely means PC spending on Fortnite is down pretty heavily, actually. But then that extra 18% on third-party games means that's actually where it's come in. Which means they're getting growth in the area they want to. Maybe not as aggressive as they maybe expected. But it actually is kind of working for them, it seems.
Okay, yeah,
just
good
not,
point, yeah.
Just not overall, because whatever Fortnite done.
And as for getting those monthly active users, well, they did give away 99 free games, totaling $2,240,
One
with
more.
700 million claimed. Yes, their top 10 titles then by spend and engagement: Genshin, Rocket League, Tiny Tina's Wonderland, GTA 5, Fortnite. Mm-hmm. So kind of interesting. Of course, then seeing the likes of Red Dead Redemption 2, that was an interesting one where the way that they had cascaded out the releases was a little bit preferential.
Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah.
But still, that wasn't even... It's interesting because that whole launch thing wasn't even in 2022. Mm-hmm. Yet I suppose here it is as a major thing in the store. So overall, that's where they are. A lot of these numbers seem really big. But the games market is absolutely ginormous, and still compared to Steam, these numbers are smaller. That being said, the free game giveaway catalog is actually pretty insane.
Yeah, it's always been crazy. It's always been crazy, to be honest.
Yeah. Now, as for 2023 then, so they've done a bit of a media tour, and speaking to Axios, the general manager of the store, Steve Allison, basically said quite a bit. And this is kind of noteworthy because they are changing some of their policies in a way that could be, will be better for the store. Basically, right, as a part of this overall thing, they're opening up to self-publishing, subject to some conditionality around the products being tested and reviewed to ensure they actually function. So the example for us, with Pale Beyond, obviously we have a publisher, so that's fine. But on Steam, right, you have Steam's self-service backend, where if we want to push a patch for our game, we
push the button,
export the build, upload it to Steam, click the go button, or maybe put it in the beta branch first or something, but you can just do that all self-service. Whereas on Epic, your publisher's got to do all that stuff. It's really bizarre. The publisher's got to do that, and it's all way slower, which is just one of those things where it does mean that Epic doesn't get to have as good a user experience as the other stores because, like, if we are, doing bug fixes and stuff, because Valve is self-service, it is just way quicker.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing that is kind of an issue with indies launching day and date on consoles as well, where they're like, oh yeah, hey, the PC build on Steam's got patched like crazy, but on console we have to, oh, here's a patch, okay, we have to submit it to Xbox, we have to submit it to Sony, and then has to go through their processes again before we can release it. We can't just go, oh shit, quick fix done. Whereas in Steam it is equivalent of, like, trying to think of a decent analogy, but it's like you hand something to someone, and they're like, could you actually change that a bit? And you can go, oh yeah, sure, done. There you go, back. Whereas in the other one, it's more regimented, it's more business-like, and it just is. It's like you're on PC, but you don't get the benefit that PC often has, and you're like, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Now, where Valve is pretty much anything but crypto, it is a bit different in Epic, where they are a lot more, they're prohibiting adult-only ratings, they are prohibiting content that involves, let's just say, adult smashing, and various other things, even though crypto stuff is fine. Now, Sweeney basically elaborated on this position, essentially just saying, they're talking about, hey, we're not the moral police. If you want to do your thing, that's fine, but, we don't have to do it. Overall, though, it's a decently mercenary rationale because they essentially don't want to have to sort through the different types of, legalities for adult content. Yeah, that being said, if you flip the toggle on in your Steam account, it seems like there's quite a lot of money to be made in the Arrow games freaking scene.
Yeah, there's a lot of money to be made, but it's also a lot of...
But is it worth it?
It's a lot of a pain in the ass, basically.
Oh.
Yeah, Steam just get away with it and go, yeah, we'll do what we can, but even then, it's like, it's a tempestuous enough place to be, and it can result in pretty bad user experience. Like, I would imagine if you took refund rates for games on average, and then you cut that down to 18 only games, especially on Steam, I imagine you'd have a substantially higher refund rate and more negative reviews on average, just because it's I guess the thing of, if you're going to be making one of those, it'll be a lot easier to make one of those than make a game that'll fight with real games, because obviously you can have adult elements and be a real game. In the sense, it's just people go there to make a quick buck, and that's just going to be a bad experience for most people. So I can completely understand where they're like, yeah, that's cool and all, but we don't want it.
Yeah.
I usually definitely, when it comes to moral arbitration in business and stuff, I think it's fairly important. But in this case, I'm going, yeah, we don't want that. Yeah, that's your prerogative, your store, work away.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, on the crypto front, they basically, it's kind of funny. They want all of the benefits, but are specifically saying anything else, we got nothing to do with that, right? So essentially just saying hey, we will have crypto games, but we have no involvement in transactions, refunds, fraud, or any aspect of customer service for the transactions within those games. Now, they did confirm it's not a free-for-all. Basically, if there's bad behavior, very swift shutdowns and stuff like that. And now Allison confirmed that there are 5 crypto games on the store, with 20 more on the way. Huzzah. So we got Blanco's Block Party, which actually is, they say, pretty well played. Another one said it does pretty well, so pretty. Not sure. Let's just be honest about what's really happening here. The other stores aren't blocking crypto games because they think crypto equals bad. Sweeney said of marketplaces like Steam, they just want to collect the 30% fees, and they're blocking everyone who doesn't want to go along with it. Is that the case? Is it not the case? I mean, Valve didn't. That's not what Valve said whenever they talked about that policy. But it's the thing with Tim. He will slurp any data he can into his narrative.
Yeah, he's very good at, like you say, narrativizing. He's very good at just going, well, I want people to think this is true, so I'm going to say it, because no one can turn around and necessarily prove me wrong. You go, yeah, of course, Steam just want their cut and to walk away. Of course. But you think about crypto, and that's what it's all about. It's not actually about protecting the user. But then it's not like Gabe's going to issue a press release and go, Tim's talking shit. That's not going to happen. That's just going to be yeah, you can either believe what Tim says or don't. And if it's put in some sort of comedy, go, yeah, Yeah, I suppose there's probably some truth to it. Probably some of it. Although I would argue then that like, well, yeah, I suppose it's a 30% cut. Where especially for the adult only stuff, it's like, yeah, they're still getting a cut. The user experience is bad. So then you go, okay, well, they care about the user experience and scams for crypto, but not about the adult only stuff. That's an interesting distinction they're not making. But then you can see how they're both completely different like avenues, and crypto is not necessarily a genre of video game or a genre of media in any capacity. It's not like, oh well, could crypto be construed as art, just art that people don't like? And most people would say, no, what are you talking about? It's clearly all just a business model in a way, even though there's obviously parts to it that are technically unique as a genre. So you can kind of see what he's talking about.
Yeah, you can. With that said, though, it's time to go into them very directly talking about Valve, right? So here's the deal. On PC, Steam is obviously the number one platform. We all know that.
We're all happy about it too.
Generally speaking, because we get a good experience. Now then, as a part of Epic's submission process, if your game is multiplayer in any way, then you have to make sure the Epic Games Store version communicates with all other store versions, and they will continue to offer their free multiplayer solution in Epic Online Services, right? So, very nice and open. Then, this is some of Sweeney's kind of elaboration on this. Basically saying Steam has created a real problem for the industry with Steamworks. They have a classic lock-in strategy where they build these services that only work with their store, and they use the fact they have the majority market share in order to encourage everyone to ship games that have a broken experience in other stores. So, is that being slightly inflammatory? Yes, it is. But obviously Steam is the lead platform and Steamworks is on Steam. What he says, Steamworks didn't work on our store. So they had, this is for some games that came like earlier on into the Epic Game Store. Steamworks didn't work in our store, so they had either a reduced set of multiplayer features or none. Or they were just limited to a much smaller audience back in the launch days of the Epic Game Store. So you had a lot of multiplayer games that really felt like they were broken. Which is a bit ouch. Yeah,
that's the thing I find interesting. Where you look at Steamworks, you go, yeah, because the user, you won't care about any of this. Like, this isn't a problem for you. This is a problem for Tim Sweeney. This is a problem for people who want to compete with Valve. Which, again, if this were any other storefront, if this weren't Steam, who we all like know have been doing a mostly grand job for as long as they've existed, if it was any other case, people would be like, okay, well, that's actually a super serious problem and competition needs to be, enabled in some capacity. Monopolistic practices shouldn't be supported. But in this case, I think users will go, yeah, but Steamworks is good and I like it. I get all my friends and I have all my trading cards and I have all my achievements and I have all my badges and stuff. All that's connected and it works fine. And that's where it's like, yeah, that's one of the sneaky ways it works. Where it's like, oh yeah, sorry, do you want to implement Epic Online Services? Or you as a developer, would you rather just have Steamworks integration? Because I think one of the cases of this being really bad back in the day was, obviously Tim talks about Call of Duty in the Windows Store. I don't know if any of you ever played Dark Souls on PC when it first launched. That didn't have Steamworks integration. That was Games for Windows Live. And it was fine. It was fine. But it didn't have achievements like the console versions did because they have trophies. It didn't have any of those. It was just, yeah, here you go. It's not on Steam. And then they had to do a lot of work to actually get Steam integration with that years down the line, which I think, if I remember correctly, I think that did it break saves. I'm not sure if it did break saves.
Oh no.
But I'm not super sure about that. But I do remember, like, every time I look, because I was looking at the Dark Souls games on Steam I had yesterday for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. But I was looking, like, oh yeah, why do I not have many Dark Souls achievements even though I played the game for like 300 hours? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Because it didn't have Steamworks. And that's a case of, like, it works for people, so no one's going to be too mad, but it is literally a problem of Steam going, yeah, this is us. Come to our platform where we have everything that works.
Yeah.
Now, what can you do, like?
The next thing that we get onto is where they will completely lose indies. Right?
Yeah.
Where they basically say the Epic Game Store will continue to get interface updates, but as a matter of principle, Allison says that Epic will not track user behavior and use it to algorithmically recommend games. And with that, the Epic Store is basically dead to a lot of indies. So I know that, like, there's often connotations of Big Brother is watching you. In this case, it is Valve seeing what games do you play, when do you play them, based on that, what games would you like to purchase? And I know that if I use the interactive recommender that is a part of Steam Labs, that it's great. I know that my discovery queue is actually pretty great. So as a user, it's good that whenever I go onto Steam, I get a personalized experience, because I'm not interested in Football Manager. I know it's a great game. I'm not interested. Same for F1, same for like a bunch of games that do really well. But when your Steam is personalized to you, you get an experience that is more games that you're interested in, right? I mean, how often would you go into, like maybe as a kid, go into the local game store and just be trying to find games that you like because, you know, you're not using the internet as much. Maybe you're only going off a copy of PC Gamer or something.
Yeah, and then maybe you're me. And live in Northern Ireland, so you can never find any JRPGs on any shelves ever.
Of course.
Yeah, it's fun times. This is great.
So it's actually one of those things where, as a user, if Valve said to me, we will look at your game playing data and recommend things to you, or we will not. That's a case where, very much unlike setting up a new copy of Windows, I will click the yes, because that's actually fine. That actually is the Steam store tuning itself to my preferences, meaning that it's, you know, it's better. And I suppose that works well because Windows, like, that's not an opt-in thing. It's like you need an operating system for your computer, right? So there it feels bad. When it's Google or, you know, just like ad trackers following you around the place, where, you know, like that obviously feels really bad. But if it's something that's like isolated on an opt-in specific platform where it just makes that platform be a better experience, I feel like that's a better experience. And then the other side of it is for indies. Like, the discovery queue gets our game loads of impressions.
Of course it does.
Because there are people who play narrative games, they think, I kind of want to browse the store. I want to like learn about some new games. So they click in the discovery queue, and then Steam says, hey, maybe you'd like this game based on all the other games that you play. Then they look at our trailer, they look at the reviews or whatever, and maybe they decide to purchase the game. That is an obvious value add as an indie developer. Whereas on Epic, it is a black hole. And while I cannot share any like specific numbers on Epic, I can say that, like, if we didn't launch on Epic, nobody would notice.
Yeah, that's the sad part.
Like, it is not somewhere that people go by default to discover and engage with games. The Epic Game Store is somewhere where people go to claim a free game, or they go to purchase a game that is on that store, which is only really going to happen if, number one, it's like an exclusive, or number two, the Epic Game Store is like the lead part of a game's marketing. And that's basically the thing with Epic. It is a black hole. You need to shove your audience through Epic. That's the only thing that will work. There is basically not really any native discovery on the Epic Game Store. And for indies, that's actually a really big problem. And for all the... because, you know, for all of the bad that you can say about something like YouTube, the idea of, like, if I click on a niche woodworking video or a niche 3D printing video, I'm actually pretty glad that YouTube is tracking everything that I do. Because then it's actually going to surface for me loads of really friggin' interesting videos within that niche.
Yeah, that's what I think is interesting with, because YouTube has the bad side of it too.
Yes,
but I think
definitely.
Valve fundamentally and Steam have they're the good guys using the techniques that all the bad guys are also using. That's what it feels like. It's like any technique is neutral.
Hats and knives.
Yeah, exactly. Any technique is neutral. It's how you use the technique is what matters. And Steam is like one of the only examples that's like popular of it being used in the way you said earlier, being like, it's isolated, it's opt-in, it's in this little basket. And then the tool is being used perfectly, the technique's being used perfectly in there to create a good experience. It's just everywhere else, the same ideas are being used to funnel into short-term profiteering at the cost of people's like well-being, I guess, if you look at social media and stuff like that. But in this case, it's like, hey, would you like to play a cool game? Yeah, well, this cool game's exactly like the other games you played. And you could argue, oh, well, does that not create like a bubble of people like not going outside of their own experience? And it can do that, but only if you engage with the recommender. You can just scroll the new and trending and see if something new catches your eye. So it's like they aren't boxing you in, but they are offering a little sandbox it's for you in that sense, like sculpted around your desires. Whereas Epic's a little bit more like the console stores. And I think that's almost the intent, where they're trying to go for, hey, we're the console store on PC.
Well, that's bad because they're just worse.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to like have a USP because they can't compete with Steam. There's no way you compete with Steam without, maybe that's a 30, 40 year thing at this point in time, where you slowly grind the right things. So they're trying to have a USP, they're trying to differentiate, and that ultimately is them going, hey, we'll be a little bit more like the console stores, where if you want a big game, you come to us. Especially because we're paying for big games to come to us first. Which is the case of, if you really love Kingdom Hearts, or you really love Stranger of Paradise, or you really love Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I don't have any non-Square Enix examples because that's all in my brain, but if you want those on PC really bad and you're a diehard fan, it's like you say, you go to Epic there. But if you aren't a super diehard fan, you'll get them on console, or you'll wait a year and get them as an example, because they just announced that Stranger of Paradise is launching on Steam on April 6th with a permanently discounted price because the game's been out for a year. So we're like, well, who bought it on Epic? The people who wanted it on PC a year earlier. And I feel like with the amount of games, that strategy's not going to work for well. So it is just you go here for the normal experience, you go to Steam for the better personalized one. And it is just like, I kind of get you're stuck with what you're doing, but it seems like it's, I don't know if they'll ever crawl out of the hole of just being that store.
Yeah, and it's a thing where, like, with user-generated tags and just all of those things, like, it works so well for discovery in Steam. Whereas Epic just clearly do not want to put in the work to build any of that. They're instead talking about, in fairness, the creator code thing that they have, really fantastic system.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, like, that is all great. I would just say that at least from an indie perspective, they are not going to lure that many people with their revenue split, because you will just get so many more sales on Steam. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles, and they need a way to solve that problem. Yep. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much that. As for exclusives then, oh boy, remember those? Yep, they are still core part of the plan, as are the weekly giveaways. They say that a handful of major exclusives really moved the needle. Smaller games, especially ones with a smaller audience that was typically on Steam, a lot of people were not willing to move over. I wonder if a game like Phoenix Point would have fallen into that. It's the one from your man, Julian Gollop, the XCOM creator, where by the time that launched in Steam, it basically had, it just got to have a Tim Sweeney paid early access.
Yeah.
And then it came out in Steam in a pretty good state. But it is just that thing, and we've commented on this perception ourselves, that the Epic Game Store is just a big black hole for marketing. The other way to do that, though, is like a Hades or a Darkest Dungeon 2. It helps in these cases because both of those companies will have a dedicated group of people that loves what they've done, right? And will follow them to whatever storefront. And doing your early access there with that smaller number of people, I mean, basically, Tim Sweeney's went and de-risked the whole thing by dropping a big wad of cash on you. You get to do an early access period that is, I guess, free to you, and then you get to have your real launch on Steam.
Yeah.
That's pretty perfect.
More or less.
But per Sweeney, this stuff can still be successful for companies as long as they have the prestige to get people across the Steamworks boundary. Interesting
framing, like interesting that it's now, okay, well, how do you narrativize this? And it's the Steamworks problem. It's not the Steam problem. It's not the natural network effect problem of we're trying to beat a bigger platform competitively, and all these natural systems are causing the issue of, well, people don't want to leave their friends behind, so it's hard for them to come over here. It's like, oh, it's a Steamworks problem. So what Valve need to do is allow allow games in their service to not have Steamworks integration, or do something so Steamworks and Epic Online Service integration can be done with ease for developers. And you can see the kind of angle that you could see been worked here in terms of, if you were to say, not that I imagine this, but if you were to bring this to a regulator or something and say, hey, we have an issue with competition in this, are you going to immediately see, well, it's the Steamworks is kind of the problem. Not that I would imagine it, but it is like building the narrative to hopefully push it through at some point in time.
Yeah, they've got to stay on message.
Yeah, exactly. It's very good.
As for future ones, they are, of course, going to continue. So, Alan Wake 2, that will be on the Epic Game Store. Playdead's next game, that's the people behind Limbo and Inside. And Gen Design's game After the Last Guardian.
Interesting.
Which may be in 50 years.
I'll get that a year after on Steam for cheaper. I like, that's the thing. I know that's just, but I know it comes across as a bit like snarky, like, oh yeah, I'll just have it on the platform cheaper later. But to me, it's like, as someone who's playing games the past couple of years, my habits have definitely changed. And now I'm looking at any game at launch and going, you need to have an insane cultural push for me to buy this game at launch. Otherwise, I'll just not bother and just wait because I know it'll be cheaper. Because games are going up in price, but there's so much more competition in the market. I do have to sit and wonder, how will games be able to manage all this competition at the same price? Is the market due for a little teeny tiny bit of a crash at some point? Maybe. That's a bit out of the scope of this video.
Yeah.
Just a little.
They also did comment on the timed exclusive release with no deal of Red Dead Redemption 2, which was exactly just because Rockstar wanted the better cut for a bit.
Yeah.
Which I guess does make sense. As a business decision, as much as, yes, it may very well have frustrated customers. So really where we are then is that the Epic Games Store is going to continue trucking along with its exclusive plan. They are not really going to develop store platform features that hit parity with Steam, which means that they're never really going to have that network effect. Yeah. Which does mean that they're just not going to be a place for indies. You're not going to have discoverability on the platform. So much of this comes down to discoverability. I mean, one of the things people criticize Twitch for, discoverability. Discoverability is great in Steam. At the end of the day, what do you want to run? Do you want to run a very old style store where, you have to worry about things like shelf space? Or do you want to run a dynamic storefront that tailors itself to the desires of its user? I mean, that's some Harry Potter shit.
It is.
That's some fucking magic, that's some magic Harry Potter shit. Fucking what do you call that thingy of requirement that everyone liked?
Room of requirement.
Yeah, that's just like that shit. Obviously, that is going to just have a higher rate of sales from users.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed on Steam. Even then, because I literally just I decided to open the Steam front page and go through what is recommended to me, and I'm just like, yep, absolutely, 100%, yep, definitely. Oh, what's that? Vernal Edge. Oh, how did you know I was interested in Vernal Edge, Steam? Because you don't know that I've been following that dev on Twitter and his updates with the game for years. But you know that I like Metroidvanias, so you're like, here's an indie that has 63 reviews that is trending mostly positive. Would you like to take a look? And I'm just like, yeah, I will. And then I go to Epic, and obviously I don't play games on Epic, so obviously it's not going to have that. Even if it did, theoretically, and it's just, here's all the front page stuff that you already know about. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know all those games because I'm a gamer. I know all them. I don't want them. I want something interesting and new. You're like, oh, that's what it boils down to. Do you want to, like I said, do you want to go for the old style of people will go look for what they want, or do you want to tell people what they want and discover them? Do you want to know people better than themselves and have them have that moment of, oh, that looks great, I've never heard of that. Oh, that's really neat, that's interesting. I think that's a better experience, especially on PC, where indies have that advantage on PC of just being easier to develop for, easier to publish on. That's going to be the future of it, to be honest. So I don't know what Tim could possibly plan.
Okay, so Tim's game plan. Here's the thing. It depends on what he wants. Mm-hmm. If he wants that to be a vibrant place for indies, then what he needs to focus on is not revenue split, but sales volume.
Yeah.
That is what indies are going to need. They're going to need something to help them increase sales volume. And I don't know whether that means having an editor's choice, because if you cannot algo this shit, then
you need to curate manually, yeah.
Yeah, then you need to have manual curation, and you need to build up a team that can do that. Right? So you need to do something that basically means that you can turn the amount of impressions your platform gets into just more sales.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what would I rather have? 88%? I mean, not that I get 88% or 70%. We will get less. Obviously, there's publisher cut, Steam cut, taxes. There's actually
just the money black hole that exists.
Yeah, you get far less than you would think. But yeah, that's ultimately the case. Do I want 88% of a far smaller pie? No, I'll gladly take 70% of a far larger pie. So they need to increase the size of that pie. Yeah. And I think that when you are getting users there via inorganic means, it's like growing by buying YouTube views. Yeah, it's better because it's not bots. It is real people going there. But you need ways of organic views, organic time spent at the Epic Game Store that is not driven by a specific, like, you know, here's a free game, come claim it. And then people claim it, and they only use the Epic Game Store to claim a bunch of free games that they have.
Yeah.
Because that's not, like, yeah, that's generating users, but... And there will be a correlation between that, and yes, some of those users will definitely go on to spend more money, and eventually I'm sure Epic will make some of that money back, but versus what happens on Steam, it's just not there. And ultimately, I guess it comes down to user experience.
Yeah.
I mean, here's even one thing. Like, as much as Steam's got all these great features, Steam runs so bad. Like, really the Steam app is a total piece of shit.
It's bad.
It runs awfully. It runs awfully in web. It runs awfully on its like native desktop app. It's terrible. So like, if I was Tim, I'd be thinking about what you want to do is you want to think like Amazon, because the one thing that Amazon has relentlessly done is prioritize customer experience. And as much as there can be horror stories in that platform, generally like they will hit the refund button so quickly,
so fast
on things. The entire thing of them making, like, I know in the US Prime is 2-day delivery. Here it's actually next day delivery.
It's ridiculous.
So they end up offering such a good customer experience that like that's how they gain market share and keep people there. So if I was Tim, I'd be thinking like, okay, you know, maybe I need to sort of turn coder brain off for a bit. And hey, we're both coders by trade. Code's awesome. Yeah. But you need to turn that off and turn on user experience brain first. I mean, in so many ways, that's why like the Fortnite Battle Pass is pretty good. It's why Fortnite feels pretty slick when you go and play it. Like it feels slick and polished. If the Epic Game Store ends up like, if you just made more features, made it a vastly superior user experience, maybe even made it support launching from other stores, like with GOG, you know what GOG Galaxy was doing. Like a lot of the engineering talent that Epic have, they could turn that into making something far better than Steam. Because the thing about Valve is, they move slowly, and evidently nobody at Valve has thought, my personal project shall be making Steam not run terribly on everything. Because even in really fast machines, I find that the Steam app just runs bad. It's bizarre. Yeah. And there's so many times, like when I boot it up, it will be a blank screen with a little like block of white on the top left corner, and it won't load the store.
Yeah, and then you'll click your wish lists, and then it won't show those because it'll open the store. And you'll click the store and it'll open, but it's not quite working right. And then you'll open again, then you'll click library, and then it'll take a couple minutes. You're like, what?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
So like, Tim, my dude, make a, like, if you want to disrupt Valve, you can do all these business things, but ultimately none of that really matters to a consumer. What you need to do is focus on making a radically superior customer experience. That's the best way. You need to delight people with how good your store works.
I mean, that's what, obviously Apple do a lot of things right.
Yeah.
But the amount of times I use an Apple product and I just go, that was just a smooth, joyous experience to like set something up or to buy something. Even the act of literally buying something from the Apple store, because I have an Apple device, is just, I can just do it. And it's like there, and every single part of the process is designed to be like, hey, we value you. Give us all your money now. Or like, I know I'm being extorted.
You're the
but
customer.
I feel good.
You're the customer, not the product. We respect you. And then your AirPods act up for a bit and you want to jump out a window.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, to me, I think it comes down to a pretty interesting principle when it comes to the whole thing. It's algorithmic versus curated versus prestige. It's algorithm versus prestige, ultimately. It's to go for personalized and people have exactly what they want, or do people want to get an experience that's not what they want? They want an experience that someone tells them will be really great and really good. And I think that's what they need to focus on. Is it being are you going to be the pragmatic gamer who plays the video game that you're most interested in? Or are you there to have a great experience from like top end to bottom end? It's like, this is where I'm not sure how well it would go. And this is a crackpot idea. But remember SteamOS? Imagine Epic OS. I'm sure Tim would love to do that. Where it's like, yeah, you don't need Windows anymore. You can just throw this on your PC and it'll like side boot instead of booting to Windows. You wouldn't want to replace Windows, but you boot to Epic OS and it's just, there's Fortnite right there, and you press one button and there it is. It all works. It all works perfectly fine. And here's the best games that are handpicked, not for you, but the best games that are handpicked and they're all at an aggressive discount because we have the revenue share, because we have the money to do that. We can work on that because, like, do that for long enough. People want to be on the store and use the store. I guess a fun example is actually a bit of a weird analogy, but have you ever watched any Kitchen Nightmares? Or is it Hell's Kitchen? Yeah, Kitchen Nightmares, Hell's Kitchen. Whichever one where Gordon Ramsay goes and reinvents a restaurant, and then his name brings loads of people in for the opening night, and then it's all about can the owners actually create a good experience? And that's the kind of thing where Tim's been going around using money to get people to come in, and then they come in and go, food was kind of mid, whatever, I'm not coming back. Whereas if they have the actual product of the store be really good, then people go, oh, this isn't exactly like Steam, but it's really nice. So maybe I'll come here for some of my products. And then eventually you win people over by having the better experience.
Yeah.
But at the minute, it's just like, yeah, do you want the worst experience? It's not personalized and kind of sucks, but it's a bit cheaper. Like, I don't really want Poundland gaming, to be honest with you.
Try to disrupt in some way. Like, can you do a subscription service that is, rivaling a Game Pass or something like that? Like, probably not as big.
Yeah, nowhere near.
But, Humble's got their version. Could you do something like that, Tim? Maybe you get, like, double the free games and a bunch of stuff. Who knows? But just they need more things that can surprise and delight customers with an amazing experience. Yep. And, their store doesn't look bad. It runs fine, but it just needs the features. So ultimately then, that's it for this video. I think you understand the core points, and including like sort of our perspective having just released an indie game, which is one that like it has been a really great success. And I would say that quite a lot of that is because of what I call like the thin end of the wedge theory, which is basically just we have enough of an audience that we can, that we can say, hey, game. And then that basically gives Steam enough data to actually understand the game, how it's being played, and then recommend it to people.
Yeah, to pay attention to it.
Which is to say, like, no matter where you are, you have to focus on cultivating your audience, bringing your audience with you. That is important in Steam. It is, I think, it is also important in Epic, but your efforts will go far further in Steam than they will in Epic. So basically, that's that. Let me know what you think. What's your experience been? Ultimately, as much as it really does seem like me and Matt are very Team Steam here, if Tim and Co., if Epic were able to make something that was so much better than Steam from like a user experience side, that was also offering a more competitive split, that would be incredible for, incredible competition for Valve. Yep. Maybe that would really make Valve decide, okay, maybe we need to re-architect the whole Steam app from the ground up so it's not shit. Maybe they would start to do other things, and maybe that would be great for everybody in this market.
Sure would.
So there you go. Have a great day. You can check out this video that we just published, and we'll see you next time.